So please join me in welcoming Polly Brasher.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation. Thank you for having me today. If you can't tell from my bio, I'm all about kids. I want kids to have a better life and good experiences and great memories. So I did start at the Obion County Museum, probably sort of like what you have here, except much messier. They had been run for, I think, 35 years, strictly by volunteers, and a lot of things had been done in a variety of ways. So when I came in, I was trying to bring things to one procedure. Let's accession things one way. Let's run our gift shop one way. So that was my first task. And because I was on that museum board, I met Robert Kirkland. I had already shared my dream of a museum park, and of course everybody who saw that just laughed at me, and that's because it was going to take millions of dollars, and who has millions of dollars to put on such a project? But then I met Robert Kirkland, and his dream was similar to mine, and he had the money to make it happen. So when the board chair was called and asked to be on the vision team and bring one person with you, I was kind of the only choice. So I got to be on that vision team and be in the very first meetings that created Discovery Park of America. It was more than an exciting journey. It was an education. My mentor told me one day that my experience with Robert Kirkland was equivalent to 2 master's degrees. You can argue that, but I'm going to go with his statement. I like that. It was quite an education. He wanted to build a bigger, better museum in a better location because the Obion County Museum, like I said, had been there for many, many years, but people still didn't know it existed. So we built Discovery Park of America. This was my first office at Discovery Park of America, a trailer that we brought in on the construction site. Construction is messy. I went through a lot of flat tires. One of my first volunteers took this picture of me with 2 phones going at the same time, just trying to talk between 2 different people. The process was a lot of volunteers, several interns, a lot of meetings because Discovery Park of America was committee driven. It was not just Robert Kirkland sitting down and telling the designers what he wanted. He had input from all over the county and sometimes people from outside the county. So I was the coordinator, and it was my job to attend every single one of these meetings and make sure that we were covering everything that needed to be covered, but that we weren't overlapping too much. And so at one point I had to call a meeting of all the committee chairs and say, okay, 3 of you have mentioned this topic, who's going to actually run with it? 2 of you have mentioned this one, who's actually going to get it? So it was interesting all the way, and again, I learned a lot through the process. I do want to point out this one. These are 2 of the early volunteers, and we wound up hiring Chris. He was such a good volunteer, we offered him a job. They sent me all over the country to see what other museums are doing. Again, a very valuable education. My story that I like to tell, though, is of the children's areas. A lot of museums have a toddler area. So I'm looking at what other people do and how they build theirs and how they restrict it. And here's what I kept seeing. A mom or a caregiver would show up with 2 kids. One of them is young enough to go in the toddler area. The other one's not. What's she going to do? Well, the toddler doesn't get to enjoy the toddler area because his sibling can't go in. So we made sure that our toddler area was family friendly, and it's a family area. And there's a place for the little ones to kind of be fenced in, but there's a place for the older kids to play right alongside. There's a place for the caregivers to sit. And we put the antique toy collection in that area because that's interesting to us adults, because that's the things we used to play with. So that's my best example of learning from what other people do. And sometimes it's that you don't want to do what other people are doing. So lots of construction. I will tell you that my biggest frustration was that we were working hard every single day. And I would see people in town at the grocery and so forth, and they would say, "When are you going to get started?" Like, you couldn't see our progress from the highway. And so they thought we weren't doing anything. And we had moved the dirt around, and we built that mound that now takes you up to the front door. You couldn't see the work that was happening. So finally, construction got big enough for people to see it, and that was exciting for me. Another part of my job was documenting everything, and I put that in quotes because there's no way. But document everything you can. Pretty much every day, unless it was pouring rain, every day before I left the park, I would take a walk and take pictures of what had happened today. And of course, sometimes I was out there in the middle of the day in what was happening. Here's a few of the buildings outside. The church was brought in from the southern part of Obion County. They actually took out the stained glass windows to protect them, folded the walls in on the floor after they took off the roof, brought that across the county, and put it back together. Carlos Lewis and Sons moved all of the buildings that were donated to us, and he's no longer with us, and I'm not sure if his son is carrying on the family business. But he was last time I spoke to him, but that's been a while. So all of the log structures were donated, the church was donated, and the grist mill was built by 2 volunteers. That's the grist mill. It's a timber frame building, and they had to build this in a warehouse across town. They built a model, and then they would build a wall, label everything, and take it apart and set it aside, and build another wall, label everything, take it apart, set it aside. On and on till they had all the pieces, and then like a tinker toy project, they brought this to the park and put it together, and they were so good, it fit perfectly. So, some amazing feats. And then, this is just before opening. You can see that the tower was the last thing to be completed. There were several complications with the tower, and we simply wouldn't move forward until we knew everything about it was going to be as safe as humanly possible. I'll tell you that the night before opening, it was about 8 o'clock, and we're good. We're ready. And the fabricators are looking at me going, "That never happens. We've never opened without being there at 3 o'clock in the morning trying to finish it first." But it was about 8 o'clock at night. And so everybody went home except me. And I just couldn't leave. I had to do one last walkthrough. Sound like anybody here? And I discovered that, yes, almost everything was ready, but not the kiva planks. So I opened that we had we had purchased $10,000 worth of Kiva planks. They're in the children's area, and it's the building toy that you can use up there. They're super cool. I love them because they're art, they're science, they're math, they're individual, they're cooperative, they're competitive. You know, there's so many things, and it's just a simple plank. So anyway, until about 10:30 at night, I was opening boxes of Kiva planks and dumping them in the crate so that people could play with them the next day. And I got down to about the last 6 boxes and shoved those in a closet, locked the door, and went home. They got them out later. It was fine. This is during the build. And this is that Kiva plank area that I just mentioned. This is the Enlightenment Room. And then this is opening and just after opening. What I forgot to tell you is y'all can ask me any questions along the way. I taught school. I'm used to being interrupted. So if you have any questions, just go ahead and ask. So this was a fun project. It was a ton of work. I learned a great deal of information. I've been to a lot of classes for museum professionals to learn how to do things better. You have, here it's KMHA, Kentucky Museums and Heritage Association. In Tennessee, it was Tennessee Association of Museums. But those are good things to plug into because you're working with people that are in similar struggles as you, and you can learn from each other. I grew up in a family business, competitive, taught school for 25 years, competitive, and then came to the world of museums. We're not competitive. You are not my competition, and I'm not yours. Anything I do to help you is going to come back to help me somewhere, somehow, someday, and vice versa. So the world of museums is a beautiful place to be, and we tend to be very, very helpful to each other. If something worked for me, it might work for you, and if I did something and failed miserably, I can warn you, you might not want to do this. It didn't work for us. So KMHA would be a great place to plug in if you haven't already. So at Discovery Park of America, they told me I could have any job I wanted, and I chose the education coordinator, and then also became in charge of safety, and then also in charge of guest experience. You know, the Bible says when you are faithful with little, he'll give you more. So that's what happened. The job just kept getting bigger and bigger. Well, I had gone as far as I wanted at Discovery Park. That's one factor. The other factor is that my son had moved to Paducah 2 years before I did, and he's as much of a workaholic as I am, and I got tired of not seeing him. So my job search was literally limited to Paducah. And this opened up. I saw it, sent my resume in that night, and it was one of those peaceful things. I just knew this was right. And I get to see my son now. I'm still doing work that I love, so it's all good. River Heritage Museum is our legal name. Always has been, always will be. But they had used River Discovery Center as their DBA for 20-something years. When I came on board, and perhaps I was part of the problem, I'm not sure, coming from Discovery Park of America, but people kept confusing us with Riverworks Discovery and Discovery Park of America. Like, okay, we need a change, because my staff was spending way too much time on the confusion. We had a chance to rebrand because we were given a $4,000 marketing grant. So, okay, let's use that to rebrand. So we went with Inland Waterways Museum. Paducah is the hub of the Inland Waterways. And so that was very fitting for us. We're excited about the new brand. That looks very pink to me. It's supposed to be sort of a red orange. On your screen, it looks very pink. I'm not sure what it looks like from back there. Okay. From sideways, it's very pink. So that's the front of our building. We are the story keepers for Paducah. And we like to say that we look to the future through the lens of the past. If I go back, if you take a good look at that boat, it's a steamboat turning into a towboat. Do you see the towboat front? And that came from our statement. We look to the future through the lens of the past. Museums have 5 functions. We do all of these, some better than others. A successful museum does all of these well. So, I've put this question to my peers, my museum peers on Facebook, and said, give me your briefest description of a successful museum. Not everybody complied. They gave me some long descriptions, but I picked up the short ones. A successful museum is accessible, is relevant, is community focused, is connected, it's a connection for people, it's inclusive, tells true stories, has happy visitors, is engaging, is friendly, is educational, is clean. And I'll tell you, I'll stop there and tell you, at Discovery Park of America, that is the #1 compliment, is how clean it always is. And my best friend from middle school is in charge of housekeeping there. And I hired her because she's always been that picky, and I knew it. She's never going to change. It's all going to be very clean and neat and organized. You want repeat visitors. You're solvent, which is a struggle for a lot of us. Open to the public. And you might laugh at that, but there are a lot of museums that simply aren't open and people can't access them. That's a problem. Models good stewardship, values heritage, is consistent, welcoming, that goes back to friendly, mission-oriented, trustworthy. Museums are the most trusted entity in the nation. And we don't ever want to lose that. And COVID really underlined that. During COVID, that was magnified and fully brought to our attention that we are the most trusted source according to surveys. So we want to honor that, hold that, and never break that. This was a little longer, but I liked it. A successful museum is one that, as you are leaving, you are already considering another visit. So what do? We collect. We have boat models. We actually found 4 boats in storage. One of my projects here is to clean out the storage and throw away the junk and take care of the good items. And the 2 Peterborough boats that you see here, the bigger ones, they were in storage, full of junk, dirty. But I thought, oh, they'd be beautiful cleaned up. So 2 volunteers have cleaned those, and they are now on exhibit.
How old are those? How old are those?
Good question. Peterboroughs are built in Canada, were built in Canada. The town is called Peterborough. We think, and we cannot prove this, but we also can't disprove it, that these boats were brought in during recovery efforts during the 37 flood. because a lot of boats came in from the east. It would make sense that Peterbilt had worked their way down the east coast. And a lot of boats, we found the record where the boats were brought in. Were these two boats brought in? I don't know. But if you come to the museum and you're standing in front of the boat on the left and turn around, there's a flood picture and the boats look extremely similar. So that's our best guess. We conserve. If you take in something, you're also saying that you will take care of that item for its life. So we conserve. We just did a restoration project on the 9-foot Delta Queen model. I kept walking by it and going, it's supposed to do more. You push the button and the paddle wheel turned. I'm like, that just doesn't make sense. It's supposed to do more. And even the ladies who've been there for a long time, they're like, no, that's all it's ever done. I'm like, I can't sit on that. The holes in the top were cut just like the old-fashioned speakers. Why would you cut speaker holes if there's no sound? And then one day I was standing in just the right place when a little boy pushed the button and I saw a light in the stairwell. Yes, it's supposed to do more. So again, we got a grant, because that's how we have to do things. I'm sure it is for you too. We got a grant to restore the Delta Queen. It is 9 feet. It's the wood carving on this and the work that he did to build it is just incredible. So we wanted to absolutely take care of it every step along the way. We couldn't take it out. I didn't want to take it somewhere else and work on it and bring it back. So what we did was go in early in the morning, take it apart, work on it, put it back together, cover it back up, and open to the public. So it took a while to do this, but it now has music and lights, and the paddle wheel still turns. I will tell you, in restoring this, when he put the new, he had to put a new power box in because the old power box wouldn't work the new lights. So when he put the new power box in, it blew up the motor for the paddle wheel. So then we had to get a new motor for the paddle wheel. Well, the new motors aren't the same size as the old motors. And so every little step along the way was another problem to solve. But the thing about me is I like putting puzzles together. I don't work jigsaw puzzles that much, but the puzzles of life. Okay, this is what we have. This is what we need. How do we make that fit together? So we just kept going. Yes.
When you said music, you have the calliope on the Delta Queen.
It is calliope music that is playing. It is calliope music that was recorded from our calliope, which is not the Delta Queen calliope, but we do have one.
What is yours from? Is it from a certain boat?
The history doesn't go back that far. I know what family donated it, but I don't know what boat it was on originally. We study, we research, we make sure that our facts are right. If we're presenting it, we want to know that it's correct. I tell my staff, it's okay to say, I don't know. Please say, I don't know. Please don't make up an answer. But the third time you're asked a question, you should have an answer. The first time, you don't know people are interested in that. One person might be the only person asking that question. The second person asks it, okay, people are interested in this. So by the time somebody asks the same question the third time, we should have an answer. So we do the research, and then we spread that information out across the staff. Sometimes we know we can't answer it quickly, and we'll ask, if you'll give me your name and email address, we'll try to get an answer to you. And we always respond. If we can't find the answer, we tell them we can't find the answer, but usually we can find the answer. We interpret. This is one place where we can do much better, and we're working on it. Interpretation, that's the signs that go with your objects, and we still have some that's incorrect. We're trying to get those changed. The riparian area, which is in the bottom left corner there, it has two big signs, and they kind of duplicate each other. So we need to do better than that and put some different information on the second sign. So this is something we're working on all the time. We have some nice exhibits. The flood of 1937 exhibit is our most popular, and we found that through a survey. But when we handed out the survey, we really thought we were looking for what's number 2. We fully expected the boat simulator to come in at number 1. It did not. The flood of 1937 came in at number 1. Okay, we learned. Don't assume we know what our visitors are like the most. The simulator's what people talk about, but when you hand them a survey and ask, it's the flood that they remember the most and want us to keep. The other photo here is of our excavation pit. When they started to put in the elevator shaft, they found the root cellar. Ray Black was in charge of all the construction and restoration of this building, and so he called everything to a stop, and they moved the elevator to a different location and preserved this. And it's also a high favorite for people. We have issues. This is our storage room, and this is not how you're supposed to store artifacts. This is what not to do. Okay. But what you can't see is all the junk we've cleaned out to get to this. So one step at a time, we're getting there. Another issue that we have is our pump room also has electronics in it. Water and electricity don't mix, so working on that too. So we've changed our flood exhibit. The top picture is what used to be there. Bottom picture is what's there now, except I chose not to show you finished pictures. I'm showing you progress pictures so that when you come to the museum, you still have a little more to see. So we took out the hydro dam, which I'm told never worked, and put in fishing and hunting. And we took out the lock and dam, which had some major leaks and was very problematic, and put in towboat models. This is our calliope, and we actually have the calliope and the trailer, but they've been separated. And one of the things I want to do is put them back together. This is our master plan for expansion and renovation. Where you see phase 1, that's the area that I just showed you. And we want to come back with a flood exhibit that is more immersive and tells the stories. In cleaning up, we found a stack of first-hand accounts from the flood of 37. That's like finding gold. So we want to share those stories with people. That says phase 1, it's probably now phase 3. We're working on this and trying to fund it, and so we may flip this. So you may actually see phase 3 before phase 2. Where it says future phases, we're calling that phase 3 now. And that's our expansion area. That is our storage area. And if you're going to house an artifact, you either need to display it or take really good care of it in storage. storing an artifact can be as expensive as displaying an artifact. So my goal is to display the most important things. If something is too precious to display, store it correctly, make a replica, put that on exhibit, but then move out the things that we don't need and don't need to care for over the next 20-something years. So a lot of the items in our storage came from the Corps of Engineers. They are building a museum, so it makes sense for us to give some of those things back to them instead of us paying to house them. So this is our flood plan because this is the one that's been fully designed. This flip that I mentioned has just recently taken place within the last week and a half. So I don't have those renderings yet. We are even more at the bottom of the Ohio than y'all are, and we caught it all. So we talk about the flood, we talk about rescue efforts, we talk about the immunization, the flood wall, and then we wanted to end with this timeline of resilience, all the things that Paducah has overcome. That's our simulator. It's good. It's another thing that we need to upgrade. And so I'm trying to get a quote on the upgrade so that I can then ask for a grant to make that happen. But this is a fun place. I've had airplane pilots come in there and have a blast driving the boat. You know, it's not just about kids. One of the things I think we do best is our programming. And Russell Orr is our education coordinator, and he and I've worked together for a long time. So he came on board already knowing my expectations for education. What I tell everybody who works with kids under me or with me is you have to have fun, because if you're not having fun, the kids aren't going to have fun. So if you're not having fun, I've got you in the wrong spot. You have to have fun so the kids can have fun, and they have to learn something today. Have fun doing it. My theory is, and I've had this theory for a long time, and I think somebody's proven it, but I don't know who that is. I don't remember. But if a kid learns something through an activity, they're going to remember it. If you just lecture it to them, they may or may not ever recall that information. So this is one of the things I think we do best. Of course, that's our confluence. You have your own confluence. And we're always looking for a way to stay open. Revenue is necessary. Donations are good. Grants are good. I haven't seen all of your spaces here, but you might have the opportunity to rent spaces for evening events or daytime events. We do that. That's a pretty good moneymaker for us. Working on an endowment. We do fundraisers. We've had 2 big fundraisers each year. We may be adding a 3rd. Because you can't stay open without money. Y'all have it nice and cool in here today. That costs money. So I know you know as much about that as I do. Do you have any questions for me? Yes.
You have work for us?
I'd have to bring my son with me. I got super tired of not seeing him.
I've got a question about traffic through your facility down there. Do you have much traffic as far as visitors?
It is mostly out of town visitors. We are sort of the hidden gem for Paducah, desperately trying to change that. We don't want to be hidden. We want people to know about us. So people coming in from out of town looking for what they can do in Paducah find us. It's the hometown folks that we struggle with getting through our doors. So the school groups coming through, that helps. And our rental venues help. Because and our situation might be a little unique there, but it doesn't make sense for us to let you have the founder's room and shut down the museum. Our restrooms are in the museum. You have to come down, you need the lights on. And I need somebody down there because I have to leave the door unlocked. So it makes more sense for us if you rent the founder's room to also be able to walk through the museum. So that lets people know about us. And, I had somebody just the other day, again, said, I've lived here for 40 years and never been in this building before. Well, we're glad you're here today. I want to go, shame on you. But we're glad you're here today. Have a look around. And so we're really trying to change that. But we had, and I know this because I had to pull it together for a grant just Saturday, we had over 10,000 people that we served last year. Not all of those were on site. We also do outreach programs, but most of them were on site. The cruise boats stop in front of us, and so those people come in, tourists come in, and then school groups were ramping back up. COVID knocked all of that out, but we're ramping back up from COVID on the school groups and really trying to make Paducahans realize that we're still there.
How old is the building again?
It was built in 1843 as a bank. It's been added on to several times. So when you're in the exhibit area, you're not in the oldest section. The chart room and the boat simulator are where the bank used to be.
And one more thing, that you tell us about your directorship for the Pleasant Hill Cemetery Association. Where is that?
That's between Reeves and Troy in Tennessee. My family is from Reeves. And Mom always went to the meetings. And so when I moved back to Tennessee, she asked me to go with her. And then there was a point at which she shouldn't be driving, so I always went with her. And I kind of raised my hand one day and said, can I say something? And the woman looked at me and she said, do you not know that your grandmother started this? I was like, no, I did not know that. Mom, you didn't tell me that. And so my grandmother actually started the association to make sure the cemetery was always well cared for over the years. So we meet and make decisions about who's mowing, and the big tree fell last week, so we need to get out here and have a cleanup day and whatever needs to be done.
How do you all fundraise for that? Just donations from family members?
Yes. Pretty much everybody that comes to the meeting brings a check with them, and then she gets a lot of checks in the mail from people who can't attend the meeting. So the money pretty much comes in all at once. There's very little money from actual burials.
Can I get back to your museum?
Yes,
Is that, the building you're in, is that part of the old better building?
it is the old Petter building.
Yes, the old Better.
Now, they kind of took over the whole block,
Right.
but yes, the historic building was their front door.
Okay. We got a cabin across the street. It's been our headquarters for a long time. And we would kind of like to have one headquarters being here. That way, if people come, we can hardly service the museum from across the street. We don't have enough people. But if we could be in this building, have our office and everything set up in here, I think it'd be really good for our museum and our community if people would come nearly any time they want to see it, you know.
Yeah.
I hope someday we can do that.
And you have to be open when people want to come. There are only 2 museums open on Mondays in Paducah, at least downtown. And frequently on Monday, people come through my door going, well, at least you're open. So, that is part of it. The Obion County Museum was only open on Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon. And so they always struggled. They were basically open 4 hours a week. So it's a struggle. You have to figure out when people are in town, when people are looking for you, and when you can have volunteers to have that open. I did just move one of my people. I moved his whole office downstairs behind the ticket counter so that I have 2 people instead of 1 down there at most times. And that's working out very well. In this day and age, it's risky to have just 1 person anywhere. And my ticket lady is 87 years old. She's been there for 20 years. She knows.
Dave belongs to this club.
Sorry? She knows everybody and everything. And I didn't want her down there by herself all the time. So I moved an office down there.
So it's essentially a self-directed tour, is that right?
It is.
It doesn't, yeah.
We can give a tour, and we do that for special groups, but essentially it is self-guided. And one of the things that I've had to do is condense the welcome spiel because it was way too long. They were trying to tell every guest about everything, and I'm like, they don't listen to you halfway through. I mean, I see them glaze over, or they literally start walking away and you're still talking. So we're trying to get that welcome spiel down. I would really like to be able to hand them a map that guides them the best route through. That's something that's always on our plate, but just we haven't finished. So yeah, that's important too. And if you're looking at the person you're talking to, you can tell whether they're still interested or not. And it's important to act on their reaction. When I hired Russell, he is a scientist and he is fantastic. But I said, Russell, you cannot give a guest your thesis paper. And this is funny because I don't fish, but I always use a fishing analogy. I said, you have to bait the hook. Give them a statement or a question and see how they respond. If they seem interested, then you give them 2 or 3 sentences, not 2 or 3 paragraphs. You start to reel them in. If they stay with you, then you can give them a couple of paragraphs. Beyond that, you kind of work off of their questions. And he's the best at it now. Fantastic. Yes.
You all have any accumulated books that you use for research on river traffic through the ages, or just something you go to the library to do, or?
I've started a library since I arrived, but I've been there for less than 2 years. So yes, I'm trying to archive books and like not sell the last one in the gift shop, put that on the reference shelf. I did that at the Obion County Museum as well. Our library is great, and Nathan, who works in the department that we use the most, is fantastic to work with us. But yes, I am trying to build that reference library. We do have, again, that came from the Corps of Engineers. We have a lot of books that are still in boxes and trying to get those out, but matching the paperwork to the donation is a real pain. I'll just be honest with you. And so that has made it a much more tedious process than it should have been. So I started taking things out of a box one day and got halfway down the box and there was the paperwork. It's like, oh, where did I just put those things? And I had to pull them back into that box because it did have paperwork. So that's a real challenge for us. Document everything and make sure everybody knows where that is. When I started at the Obion County Museum, again, 40 years of volunteers, about 35 by the time I came on. I found their accession records, done 4 different ways. Mind you, these records were underneath the book that tells you how to accession. There's only one way to do it right. So right underneath the book were 4 wrong ways to do it. So it's worth taking the time to research and learn or ask and get some help and do it right the first time, because it's very tedious to go back and do it right the second or third time. And like I said, museums are very helpful. Anything else? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Absolutely.